This is the Regis Show, and today we're here with Emily Ross, and she's going to describe for us a book that she liked called The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Give us some background information about J.D. Salinger.
Well, he was born in Manhattan, New York, and basically what inspired him to write this book was that he really wanted to portray how his life was as a teenager, and so the main character, Holden Caulfield, is basically portraying himself as his life was when he was a teenager.
That's really interesting. Now a word from our sponsors. Oh. This is the Vizio TV, perfect for watching NFL Sundays. And now we're back with the Regis Show with Emily Ross. If you missed it before the break, she gave us background information on her author, J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye. Now we're going to get a brief summary of The Catcher in the Rye.
The book The Catcher in the Rye is about a teenager, Holden Caulfield, and he gets kicked out of his school, Quincy Prep, and he has a past of getting kicked out of his schools. So he wants to avoid telling his parents this bad news. So in the meantime, he goes many places, and he talks to nuns, and he goes to the park, and he meets a little girl, and it just brings back memories of his childhood, about skating in the park, and it makes him miss his sister, so he decides to eventually just go home to see his sister, and so he sneaks in at night and talks to her, and she gets mad because she finds out that he got kicked out of school, and she's disappointed, so he feels bad about that. And then his parents get home, so he hides in the closet, and then he leaves once it's quiet in the house. And then he basically just goes to stay at an old teacher's house, and his teacher tells him that he needs to get his life together, basically, and, try his hardest in school so that he doesn't get kicked out again. So, and I can't tell you the ending, so you're just going to have to read it to figure that out.
Darn. Well, sounds very interesting. Now for another commercial.
Stop the coughs. Buy Cherry's cough drops.
Now we're back with Emily Ross on The Regis Show, and before the break, she gave us a summary of The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and now we're going to discuss some common themes that he used in his book, The Catcher in the Rye.
When I read this book, there were three main themes that were presented to me, and the first one is alienation as a form of self-protection, which to me means that he alienated himself from people and friends as a defense mechanism. So he really didn't have close best friends. He rather had acquaintances, I would say, because he couldn't be as trusting towards people as he should be. And that's one theme. The next one I had was the painfulness of growing up, which to him, he really dislikes to have fun, and so the maturity aspect of growing up is difficult for him. So that's a main theme in the book also. And the last one is the phoniness of the adult world. And throughout the book, he uses the word phony many times. It's probably the most used word in the book. So he really thinks people are so phony, he just doesn't trust people, and that's why he's kind of afraid of becoming an adult, because he just thinks all adults are fake and they just are phony that way. So those are the three main themes in the book, and that's all I have.
Sounds like it's interesting. Now for a break. What to put on my hamburger? Yes! Put barbecue sauce on it. Now back from the break, we have Elizabeth Reed here. She's a longtime friend, and her book was The Stand by Stephen King. Why don't you tell us some background information to get the audience warmed up to Stephen King?
He was born to the full name Stephen Edwin King. He was born on September 21st, 1947 in Portland, Maine. And The Stand was written as a kind of epic Lord of the Rings type of story, but in a contemporary American setting. The main background of The Stand came from when King and his family moved to Boulder, Colorado, and there he saw a 60 Minutes chemical biological warfare, and this incident impacted him so well that he set the stand around that. And the book was first published in 1978, but later he republished it in 1990 as a complete and uncut edition, putting everything he originally wanted into it.
Sounds very interesting. Now for a
I'm
break.
hungry. What's in the kitchen? Oh, Auntie Anne's pretzels. Salty and delicious.
Now we're back on the Regis Show with Elizabeth Reed. Before the break, she told us about Stephen King, gave us some background information. Now she's going to give us a summary of the book, The Stand.
Okay, The Stand is written into 3 parts, all put into one. And the first part is about the government accidentally releasing a deadly biological weapon that is formerly called Project Blue, but later on renamed Captain Trips, and it kills off the majority of the human population in North America, except for a few survivors. And in the second part, the survivors receive dreams from good and evil, 2 people represented, and they all kind of come together into 2 groups. And in the third part, they kind of take a stand against each other, and ultimately the book is about facing off good and evil and who will win, in the hope and despair of if the world were to end, what would happen.
Sounds very interesting. Now for a break for our sponsors.
Are you hungry? Get some dog food? Yummy. She wanted some of Rachel Ray's dog food. Buy it now.
Back with Elizabeth Reed on the Regis Show. She's going to describe some basic themes of The Stand by Stephen King.
The Stand mostly stands around 2 themes. First, the theme of good versus evil. That's throughout the whole book. In the beginning, it's the people against the government and how the government is evil and trying to force them to believe that everything's all right and everything will be okay. And the rest of the book, it's all about the 2 separate groups who are taking a stand against each other, the good and the evil. And the last theme is hope versus despair. And throughout the whole thing, they kind of have to keep hope that they can keep the country up and running even with the few survivors that there are. And eventually that everyone always falls into despair and they're not sure what to do. And it's just about finding that hope.
This book sounds very delightful. Now for a word from our sponsors.
Look at this photograph. Every time it never makes me laugh. Oh, hi there. I'm part of Nickelback, and you should buy our newest album called All the Right Reasons.
Now we're back with the Regis Show. I'm Regis, and earlier we had Elizabeth Reed and Emily Ross describing their books, The Stand and The Catcher in the Rye. Well, my book was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. To give you some background information about Truman Capote, he was born in New Orleans. His mother was a beauty pageant star when she was 16, and when she got pregnant with Truman Capote, she decided against aborting him, but it was an option to her. Truman Capote decided to write In Cold Blood because the Holcomb murders inspired him to want to write about them and make an interesting story about them. Well, he went to Holcomb, Kansas, and wrote the book In Cold Blood about the Clutter family. It's said to be one of his best books, but also one of his worst books. Now for a break.
Woo! I'm falling and I can't get up! Life alert!
Now we're back. Earlier, I described the book's author, Truman Capote, of In Cold Blood. And now I'm going to give you a brief summary about the book, In Cold Blood. Well, the book was about the Clutter family, who was murdered gruesomely, and then Dewey, who was the investigator of the murders, follows Dick and Perry, who travel around the country writing hot checks to make by. Well, Dewey pulls them in and questions them about the hot checks, but really he's questioning them about the murders too. In the end, you'll have to see. Now here's another break.
Oh, Axe gets you the ladies.
And now we're back with the Regis Show. I'm Regis. And now we're going to discuss the themes of In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. one of the major themes was the loss of innocence. Before the Holcomb murders, the town was very close and tight-knit. After the murders, they began to turn on each other and, quote-unquote, lost their innocence. While they were losing their innocence, they all started fighting and turning on each other and started hating each other and started gossiping about who committed the murders, and that was the main theme of the loss of innocence. Of course, in this novel, you could point out the theme of good versus evil. Perry and the Clutters kind of being good. The Clutters definitely being good, but Perry was questionable. Perry sat on the line between good versus evil. He had remorse about the Clutter deaths, but on the same point, he didn't want to be caught. Dick, on the other hand, really did not care. The theme good versus evil fits very nicely because there's sides on every spectrum between good, middle, and evil. Evil definitely being Dick, middle being Perry, and the Clutters being good. Now for a word from our sponsors.
Get off, stupid dog! Oh my... Oh, I'm tired and can't sleep.
Can't sleep? Take some sleep medicine.
Hello, this is the Regis Show, and I'm Regis. Earlier today, we had Elizabeth Reed and Emily Ross describe their books, The Stand and The Catcher in the Rye. Now we would like to welcome back the ladies. Welcome back, Elizabeth Reed and Emily Ross. Today, we are going to tell you how The Catcher in the Rye, The Stand, and In Cold Blood are still relevant to today's world. Liz, why don't you kick it off for us?
Right, The Stand is so relevant today because every day we go through seeing good and evil in our world and deciding between which that you'll go with. And we also have to fight hope and despair because we have to have hope that everything we know will still be there tomorrow.
Very good answer.
Thank you.
Now, Emily Ross, why don't you tell us about how The Catcher in the Rye is still relevant to today's world?
Okay, The Catcher in the Rye is still relevant to today's world because Holden Caulfield, the main character in the book, is a rebellious teenager and he doesn't want to be mainstream and fit in with all the other teenagers, like do the same exact things. And that's still relevant today because there are many teenagers that are rebellious and do things their own way.
Very good answer. Now I'm going to describe how In Cold Blood is still related to today's world. In Cold Blood has the main theme of good versus evil and losing of innocence. Today we see young kids grow up and lose their innocence to today's world as the sinful nature of humans. In Cold Blood is good versus evil, and today we see that all the time by politics versus people being good versus bad and all different kinds of scenarios that can be fought. So that's how In Cold Blood relates to today's world. Thank you for joining us today, Emily Ross and Liz. Thank you. You may leave the stage. Thank you for joining us on The Regis Show. I'm Regis.
Have a good day!